Welcome back with a smiley face. A link of previous episodes is provided into the description of the video. You can also join us on Patreon to listen more unlimited audiobooks like this. You can also visit and shop our ebooks. Luna's Journey. Episode 2. Lily POV. I gasped. Hazel nodded with sad eyes. He hit it very well. I never paid attention to any of the warriors, aside from treating them on occasion. That's why Janine picks on me. She told everyone that I used James to try and become a higher rank in the pack. A lot of people believed her. They still do. Goddess, that's awful. I'm so sorry, Hazel. I said. Thank you. And Lily, I swear that's not what I'm doing here. I just thought you could use a friend. Goddess knows I could use one. I held up my hand to stop her and smiled. Hazel, never once did I get any vibes that you were using me. And I do need a friend. It sucks coming into a new situation and a new home without having anybody. I'm glad you spoke to me today and I'm glad to call you a friend. I'm glad to call you a friend too. She smiled. And as your friend, I am going to do something for you. Don't ask me what, I said as she opened her mouth, just know that I am going to take care of you. And to do that, I need to go see Dimitri. Hazel looked nervous now. Oh, okay. I patted her hand on the bed. Don't worry about a thing. With that, I hopped off the bed and marched to the door, telling Hazel she could stay as long as she liked. Once I was in the hallway, I stopped to listen to see if Dimitri was in his room. Silence. So, his office then. I assumed, anyways. One of these doors must be it. Wandering past each door, I stopped to listen and also see if I caught his scent. Until I came to the door with a plaque on it reading Alpha's office. Well, that was pretty obvious in hindsight actually. Gathering up my courage, I twisted the knob and opened the door. Dimitri was sitting behind a large oak desk, papers spread out everywhere and a laptop open to his left. His head snapped up as I walked in and closed the door behind me. Taking a second to glance around, I took in his office as a whole. He had bookshelves stacked behind him with thick books covering every inch. A few pictures hung on the wall, more like the artwork I was admiring earlier. A comfortable-looking black sofa was placed against the wall to my right, but my guess was he didn't use it much. It was spotless with no imprints on it at all. The walls were a dark grey and the carpet was black. Very manly. Ever heard of knocking? My attention was pulled back to my Alpha. He was annoyed, that was obvious. Whatever. I have. I replied casually. Good. Next time, do so. I need to talk to you. Yes, I gathered that. What do you want? He sat back in his chair, and for the first time, I noticed how rugged he looked. His hair was a mess, as if he'd been running his hands through it. His shirt was ruffled, and he had the beginnings of stubble on his face. Actually, he looked hot, not that I was going to point that out. Instead, I took the seat across from him and crossed my legs. I wasn't one for beating around the bush usually, so I decided to get straight to the point. Were you aware that your lead warrior was abusing one of your pack members? I asked bluntly. His jaw dropped slightly. Clearly that's not what he had expected when I barged in on him. What? He asked. Your lead warrior, James. He manipulated a pack member into sleeping with him, and then shunned her, and started spreading rumors about her. Dimitri's jaw set. You're talking about Hazel? Yes. I replied. I'm well aware of the rumors. There isn't much that's said in my pack that I don't hear. Okay. So what are you going to do about it? Excuse me. You are going to do something, right? That happened months ago. So. He stood up from his desk. So, even if what you're saying is true, there isn't much I can do about it. She never came forward with any claims of abuse. And besides that, the matter is done with. Now my jaw dropped. Was he serious right now? Are you kidding me? I laughed humorlessly. It's far from being done with. I air quoted him. Look. He pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. I'm extremely busy. And, yay, you found a friend. But did you ever stop to consider that maybe she wasn't telling you the whole story? Or even part of it? Did you stop to consider that maybe she lied? My anger boiled over at his words. I flew to my feet and glared at him. Seriously? She didn't lie. You just want to push the matter aside because you don't want to punish any of your precious warriors. Tell me, if Hazel had come to you months ago, would you have done something about it? Of course I bull. I nearly shouted. You wouldn't have because of who the person in question is, and his rank. It also doesn't help that his buddies backed him up. It would have been his words against hers, which makes her word count for nothing. Especially given her rank. Why would you jeopardize your lead warrior's reputation over a simple Omega? You wouldn't have. As for the matter being done, it's clearly not. She is still being taunted and bullied to this day. Mostly by your girlfriend, I might add. His eyes widened at my outburst but narrowed when I mentioned Janine. She is not my girlfriend. He gritted out. I scoffed. You should try telling her that sometime. So that's the real issue, is it? You came here to yell at me because you're jealous that I slept with someone before you. This man made me want to pull my hair out in frustration. I'm not jealous. I don't care who you slept with. I came here for one reason only, and that's because I heavily disagree with what James did to Hazel. Did you stop to consider that he might have done it with other girls as well? Throwing his words back at him like that made him stop for a minute. Whatever he was going to say clearly no longer applied, and I seemingly stumped him for a moment. Finally, he spoke again. It's not like he raped her. She was willing. She wasn't. She told him she wasn't ready, that she wanted to wait to see if they were mates. He manipulated her by flirting with other women in front of her, until she finally gave in. He brought her to this floor, to my room. She told me he was less than accommodating too, considering it was her first time. She may have been willing, but that doesn't make what he did right. I spat. James brought her here. I nodded. While you were away on business. His face darkened. I'm going to need to speak to her. I need to hear this from her, not you. If she wants to make a formal complaint, then she is the one who has to come forward. Fine. I shrugged. We stood in silence. Awkward silence. I didn't know what to do now, and it seemed neither did he. Of course, he chose to break the silence by being AE. Don't think you can come in here anytime you want to yell at me. I don't tolerate disrespect. Right. Not from me anyways. Just from the men in your pack. The next thing I knew, I was pinned against the wall, his hands on either side my head, his face inches from mine. What did you say? He growled. Nervousness pooled in my stomach and my hands started to shake. Despite that, I raised my chin defiantly and met his gaze. You heard me. I said. Listen to me, and listen well. You may be my mate and wife, but that doesn't mean you can disrespect my pack or me. Maybe James is AE, but he is one of many men in this pack, and not all of them are the same. You will not slander all based on your opinion of one. And until something is proven, it is just your opinion. Being your mate makes me Luna of this pack. As Luna, it's my job to care for pack members. I won't stand by if even one is being mistreated. At my words, something in eyes changed, some emotion came to the surface. He blinked it away before I could decipher what it was. Regardless, you will wait until I've investigated the matter. I don't want you speaking of this until I have. Okay. Dmitri searched my face, looking for any hint that I would go back on my word. His breath fanned my face, his scent overwhelming me. Suddenly, the atmosphere around changed. His gaze went from searching to tracing my features, landing on my lips. I'd be lying if I said his closeness wasn't affecting me too. The mate bond wasn't that strong between us yet, as I hadn't fully shifted. I knew it would be much stronger afterwards. A part of me worried about that, because I still wasn't sure about Dmitri at all. I wasn't ready to be close to him, not yet. Right now it was fairly easy to ignore him and be away from him. But soon, all too soon, the bond would start affecting us both more, making us want to give in to our base desires. Dmitri moved closer and shock rippled through me. Was he going to kiss me? Now? After a fight of all times as well? Through the shock though, I couldn't find it in myself to move or push him away. My eyes closed as he came closer still. Another inch. Knock knock knock. Dmitri POV. I nearly growled out loud at the sound of someone knocking on my door. However, a bigger part of me was relieved. What was I thinking? You were thinking that you wanted to be close to our mate. Ajax said. Shut up. I don't. I snapped. I yanked the door open and this time I did growl. As if I needed another headache right now. Hello Dmitri. Janine purred. What do you want Janine? I snapped. I hadn't forgotten what she did earlier today. She must really think highly of herself to attack Lily the way she did. To say I had been angry was putting it mildly. Ajax had been begging me to let him out to teach her place. It took a lot for me to keep him in this morning. The only thing that calmed him down was watching Lily handle herself. And she handled herself all right. Not many pack members stood up Janine and her friends. I'd felt pride for my mate this morning, just like I had a few minutes ago when she said what she had about standing by the pack members. Janine stepped into my office like she had an open invitation to do so. I thought we'd have some fun. She smiled and fluttered his lashes at me. I almost rolled my eyes. I felt anger coming from my mate and I glanced in her direction. She was giving Janine a look so cold, I was surprised she didn't turn to ice under her stare. So much for not being jealous. Not in the mood Janine. Especially with you. I said. She laughed, the sound grating my eardrums. Oh come on baby. You know you. It was that moment she noticed Lily. Her eyes narrowed into slits and the smile dropped from her face. What is she doing here? Janine hissed. Let me out. I need to teach this slut a lesson. Ajax snarled. Calm down. I'll handle it. She's here because she had something to discuss with me. Furthermore, this is our floor. She lives up here too. Not that any of that is your business. However, it's actually good that you're here Janine. I leaned down so we were eye level. Care to explain why you attacked my mate this morning? I asked. Her eyes went wide and she started to look nervous. I. Spit it out already, Planting her feet, she met my eyes. She's not good enough, Dimitri. Look at her. She's small and useless. She will never be a good Luna for our pack. She will never be good enough for you. With one move, I had her pinned against the wall by her throat. Her legs dangled, trying to find grip where there wasn't any. I squeezed, cutting off her air. You will not speak that way about your Luna. I've let you get away with so much for far too long, Janine. You think you're very high and mighty, but don't forget your place. You will respect me and you will respect Lily, or there will be consequences. Do I make myself clear? I growled. She made a squeaking sound that I took as confirmation and I dropped her. She dropped to the floor, her hand going to her throat. Oh, and one more thing. You are not my girlfriend. If I hear you telling one more person you are, I will personally throw you in the dungeon myself. You weren't easy, that's all. I snarled. Janine looked at me with tears in her eyes, but I couldn't care less. Shakily, she got to her feet and fled. I slammed the door behind her. Good riddance. A small whimper had me turning my attention to my mate. She stood off to the side now, probably to avoid Janine's body when I slammed into the wall. The look on her face though sent me into automatic alert mode. What is it? What's wrong? I asked. She just shook her head, taking a tiny step back. You scared her? Ajax said. Hey! Remember how she arrived here? Obviously she was abused at that pathetic excuse for a pack. And you just went all big bad alpha in front of her. Oh! There was definitely fear in her eyes. She was shaking too. An unfamiliar feeling crept up on me, it took me a second to put a name to it. Regret. I felt regret for scaring my mate. I never felt regret for anything. She needs to toughen up. I'm an alpha. I'll do what I have to in order to ensure my pack stays in line. Wow! You really are a Dimitri. Ajax retreated to the back of my mind. At the same time, Lily threw the door open and ran from the office. Literally ran. More regret ran through me, but I shoved it down. What did she expect from the cruelest alpha after all? Sitting down at my desk, I went back to my work. However, my mind kept replaying her face. Why did it bother me so much that she openly feared me? Many people feared me. I didn't care. Perhaps it would stop her from coming into my office unannounced and yelling at me. But no matter how I justified my actions, the urge to go and see if Lily was okay wouldn't go away. I drowned myself in paperwork well into the evening. Or I tried to. After reading the same page a dozen times, I finally gave up. Sleep is what I needed. Locking the door behind me, I made my way to my room. Pausing with my hand on the knob, I glanced at Lily's door. Tomorrow night she would shift. And the mate bond would start to become more forceful between us. Ajax had been going on all week about how excited he was to meet his mate, his other half. He couldn't wait for tomorrow night, but me. I wasn't sure about it. Alpha Theo told had me Lily was an Omega. Weak. It was confusing that I would have a weak mate, given that I was an Alpha. But if she made me stronger, what did I care? I'd intrigued about her past, but he couldn't give me much. Just that they adopted her when she was a kid, and she didn't know where she came from. They assumed she was an orphan and she never mentioned her parents or what pack she was from. She looked weak, but that could be because of her lack of care. She certainly didn't act weak. On the contrary, she was rather sassy. Shaking my head, I went into my room. The girl occupied far too much of my mind today, resulting in me getting absolutely nothing done. I took off my clothes, save my boxers, and climbed into bed. Sleep came lazily, and I was almost there when images of what having Lily in my bed would be like. Having her under me, or on top of me. I groaned loudly. I'd never get to sleep if she kept invading my mind. It's because she's close to her shift. Ajax said. You could embrace it, you know. The bond. I thought you were ignoring me. I grumbled. Just think about it, Dimitri. She's our mate. Ours. And I don't want to lose her. We're not going to lose her. Really? Did you see her face today? The image flashed in my mind for the 10 millionth time. Keep going like this, and you will lose her. And then it won't matter why you chose to bring her here, because she'll be gone. Luna's Journey. Episode number 02. Chapter 13 to 25. Lily POV. I woke up the next day with my stomach in a pile of knots. For a myriad of reasons, today was the full moon, I was finally able to shift. That was enough to cause anxiety in itself. Then there was Hazel. She hadn't been happy about what I'd done, but I'd eventually calmed her enough to see the situation rationally. I hoped beyond hope I hadn't lost a friend. Letting out a huge yawn, I flopped back onto my pillow and pulled the covers over my head. I wasn't ready to get up yet, in fact I didn't even want to leave my room until I absolutely had to. I'll do all the work, Lily. And our mate will be there to help us through the pain. I said in my head. I cringed. Dimitri was the last person I wanted to see right now. Or maybe ever again. The way he'd handled Janine last night in his office, part of me was admittedly super happy that he'd put her in her place. But an equally loud voice was telling me that it was way too easy for him to manhandle her the way he did. He seemed to have no qualms about being violent, a quality that I certainly did not find welcoming in any way. Obviously, I knew he was violent, but to his own pack members? No matter what they did. You're thinking too much into this. I clipped. Am I? I don't think so. I snorted. Obviously, words don't have much effect on him. I bet he'd told her before to back off and she didn't. Maybe this was the only way to get her to listen. It's still wrong, Aya. You wouldn't be saying this if it had been me in her place last night. For that, she had no response, because she knew I was right. All night I'd been thinking about Dimitri and my first shift. Trying to find a way to get through it without him knowing. I'd briefly thought about bringing Hazel with me, but I didn't want to put her through that. The first shift was gruesome, I didn't want to freak her out. I'd considered Clint too, but if Dimitri did happen to come around, he'd probably kill him. No, not probably. He would definitely kill him. So that only left one option, to do it by myself. Dimitri could justify what he did a million different ways, but his behavior, seeing the beast inside, it had truly frightened me. Shift or no shift, I wanted to avoid him. I didn't agree with my plans, of course. She was pacing in my head, getting more and more edgy as time ticked by. Eventually, I got up and showered, dressed, did my hair. Distraction methods. Greta brought me lunch, a pork stew with a side of freshly cooked vegetables. It smelled so delicious I almost drooled, but my stomach didn't feel like it could handle food. Don't worry about it, dear. Greta said, seeing my facial expression. It's normal not to be hungry before your first shift. Your body is preparing. I stared at her. How did you know? She gave me a half smile. I've raised 4 children, not including their friends who were always at our house. I've seen many many first shifts. The signs are obvious, if you know what to look for. I sighed. I'm sorry, Greta. For what? I waved my hand over the tray the food. You shouldn't have gone to so much work. It was no work at all, or trouble sweaty. Tell you what, I'll leave it here in case you get hungry. I have to get back to the kitchens though. Good luck tonight. And then she gave me a reassuring hug and bustled out the door. I glanced back at the food, my stomach coiling. I hate to waste it, but it might be a good idea to listen to our body. I'd hate even more for that to come back up later. Agreed. I said. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I blew out a long breath. My legs were bouncing in an unsteady rhythm. I was getting more and more restless by the hour. Maybe no, Aya. Lily, it's going to be so much worse without him. I don't care. I've gotten through so much without him. We have. We will get through this too. You are so stubborn, Lily. And you aren't. Can we at least go outside? I don't want to be in here anymore. She grumbled. Fresh air sounded really good right now. So did walking. There was only so many times I could pace my room. I sighed in relief as I threw my shoes on and opened the door. For a couple seconds, I stood in the doorway, listening for any signs of Dmitri. His scent was faint, a few hours old. He hadn't been up here in a while, probably not since breakfast. Inhaling deeply, I noticed his scent, though old, was stronger now. More defined. It sent a tiny shiver through me, and the image of him and me last night before Janine interrupted flashed into my mind. What would it be like to kiss him? To have his hands on me? I shook my head, hard. What was I even thinking? I was trying to avoid the man for God's sake. Our bond is getting stronger. After we shift tonight, it will almost be complete. Almost? I asked. The bond will be at its strongest when we've been mated and marked. Unfortunately, I didn't blanch the way I wanted to. The idea of Dmitri and I mating right now didn't seem so bad. Giving my head another shake, I stepped into the corridor, closing the door behind me. Not going to happen, Aya. It has to eventually. I didn't reply. She seemed cheered by the idea of being marked, and I would be too, under different circumstances. Right now, I was focused on getting to my destination outside without being seen by him. Keeping my head down, I flew down the stairs and through the front foyer. Once I was finally out, I felt a sense of huge relief. Like getting into a nice shower after working out. Let's go to the woods. Nodding, I jumped down the stone steps, heading around the back of the house. I nodded politely to people I passed, saying a quick hi. At the edge of the trees that lined the property, I glanced back over my shoulder, scanning the house, the workers. Nobody was paying attention to me, so I quietly slipped into the shadows of the forest. It was quiet. Peaceful. The only distinct sounds were the occasional chirping of the birds and crunching of leaves and twigs under my feet. I walked for hours, only paying attention when I noticed the sun beginning its descent behind the far mountains. I'd been feeling much better, being out here, but anxiety shot through me as I watched the sun getting lower and lower. Instinctively, I turned, heading back towards the pack house. My feet seemed to have a mind of their own as they carried me back the way I'd come. Part of me wondered why I was going back, when the whole point was to find somewhere private to go through this. I didn't really know, so I just kept walking. By the time I stepped through the trees into a small clearing, one I'd passed hours earlier, it was dark with the full moon peeking above the tops of the trees. I stopped to catch my breath, staring at it. So many times before, I'd looked up at the same moon, hearing the screams throughout the pack of those first shifters. It had always put me on edge knowing someday I would go through the same thing. The only thing that made me look forward to it, that made anyone look forward to it, was the joyous howls that followed. I'd pictured more times than I could count what it would be like to finally be in my wolf form, the feeling of freedom, of strength. Things I did not have for so long in my life, things I craved. Even if I was convinced for a long time that I didn't have a wolf, I dreamed hard. I dreamt of shifting and leaving my abusers. Never having to go back. Maybe finding another pack, people who actually cared about me. Who would look after me. Of finding a mate who would love me. A soul tear ran down my cheek as I stared at the moon. Maybe I'd gotten part of my wish. There were people here who cared about me. Greta, for sure. And then Hazel, and maybe even Clint. People I could call friends. My heart wobbled with the thought of my other wish, a mate who would love me. I didn't think Dimitri was capable of loving anyone. I sat on the ground, wiping my face. Thoughts swirled in my mind while I sat on the hard ground and stared at the hazy moon. Lily POV I sat, still as stone, until my hands started to itch. I rubbed them absently, but the itch persisted. So much so that it was bordering on painful. The feeling spread through my palms and up my arms, my neck, down my chest and soon through my whole body. It felt like a million bees were trapped under my skin, stinging me over and over. "It's starting, Lily," I whispered. She was panting in my head. Panic shot through me at her words. What? How do me? You don't have to. I'll do everything, but it's going to suck. It already does. This is just the start, Lily. It gets much worse from here. As soon as she stopped speaking, I felt my wrist bone snap. I screamed. Loud. More screams followed as the bones in my fingers snapped and started reshaping themselves. The itch had now transformed into a burn, slow and fierce, spreading through my veins and muscles and nerves. It felt like someone had shoved me into a fire. More bones broke, in my feet and ankles this time. Every single inch of my body hurt and I slumped to my side, curling into a ball. My shoes felt much too restraining, but I couldn't find the energy or the will to care about removing them. The burn moved to my head, splitting my skull into pieces. I scrunched my eyes shut, fighting against the pain. Make it stop. Goddess, make it stop. I pled silently. It will. Lily, don't fight. I's words hit a wall, the wall I'd spent years building. It was an automatic instinct now to shield myself mentally through pain. It had been the only thing that got me through all my abuse. Just shut your eyes and go to a happy place. My response was built into me. And compared to this, my former pack's torture was nothing. I'd take it again, gladly. Anything but this. Snap! I shrieked so loudly my eardrums popped. I wish Dimitri were here. It was both a wish and a thought. I had been beyond foolish to think I could do this without the help of my mate. Any doubts or fears I had of him right now were completely and totally insignificant. Was I even a person anymore? By now I felt as though I should resemble a broken glass, shattered across a floor in a million pieces. How was it possible that I could come out of this hole? Endless tears streamed down my face accompanied by broken, gasping sobs. I don't know if the moon goddess took pity on me, or if I was just done struggling against me and called his wolf, but suddenly the pain reduced exponentially. The burn that was eating me from the inside went back to a mild itch. Uncomfortable, but bearable. The pain of my bones breaking and reshaping was also, unbelievably, bearable. It still hurt, but I could manage it, focus around it. Through that came his scent. Much stronger now, and calling me. Lifting my head slightly, I looked into Dimitri's eyes. I could see anger, possibly at my stupidity. However, the dominant emotion on his face right now was worry. What was more shocking, probably to the both of us, was my reaction to seeing him here with me. His hand was resting lightly on my waist, but I knew I needed more. With every ounce of strength I could gather, I flung myself up and into his embrace. His arms wrapped around me as I lay my head against his shoulder, right over his marking spot. His scent was so strong there. It helped so much. "Don't go," I heard myself whispering. "I won't. I'm here, I'm staying here with you," Dimitri replied. A loud groan escaped me as my shoulders hunched in on themselves. "You're doing great, Lily. Just great. It'll be over soon." But it wasn't. Together we sat on the hard ground, my form going from beast to human and back again, over and over. What was happening? I'd never heard of this happening to anyone else before. Dimitri kept talking, but he was growing tense, rigid. I could feel something was wrong and a horrible thought struck me. What if I couldn't shift? That would be some joke, convinced at not having a wolf, only to get one and then not be able to shift. "Lily." He rubbed my back. "Listen to me. You have to let go. Let your wolf take control." I whimpered against him, shaking my head. "Why not?" he asked. I'm scared, so scared," I whispered. Dimitri's hands moved from my back, up my arms and over my shoulders to settle, holding my face between his palms. He leaned back far enough to look into my eyes. "You don't need to be scared. I'm here and you will get through this. We will, together. You just need to let go," he told me. "He's right. Stop fighting it," I panted. But I couldn't. Every fear, every taunt and jab and insult from my past was flooding my mind, reinforcing my wall. "What is holding you back, Lily?" Dimitri demanded. A fresh sob broke from my chest. "I can't. I will never be anything, never, worthy of my title," I choked. "Yes we are. Let me show you. Special, we're so special, Lily," I grunted. I heard her words but I watched Dimitri's face. Worry was replaced by sadness and regret. In the second it took for his face to change, I was pressed back into his shoulder, his lips at my ear. "Together, Lily. I'll shift with you. Together. Okay." The desperation in his voice made my decision. Clenching my teeth, I nodded mutely. Fighting against every instinct I had, I finally let my wolf take control. My body shook as it transformed, and when my hands became paws this time, they stayed that way. My back arched painfully, even with my mate there. My face contorted, teeth growing into long sharp canines. I felt fur sprout from my skin and cover myself. "Lily." I heard Dimitri's voice, but it sounded far away. All I knew was the pain was getting worse, his touch wasn't bringing as much comfort anymore. And then oof! My pain doubled. Tripled. Exceeded anything I'd ever imagined. My eyes shot open to see my mate lying on the ground some 5 feet away. Strangely, I was looking down at him. I didn't have much to process it though, because the pain in my body started to gather into one area, my heart. It was like it was sucking all the pain into it, and I nearly fainted from the intensity. It felt like hours had gone by, when in reality it was only a few seconds, when the pain suddenly stopped and I crashed to the ground completely and utterly exhausted. Dimitri's POV. I rubbed my eyes. Multiple times actually. I couldn't be seeing this right. Lily lay on the ground a few feet from me, panting heavily in her wolf form and whimpering quietly. I opened my mouth to say something to her, but it closed again of its accord. Words weren't processing for me right now. My entire being was dominated by shock and disbelief. Even more shocking, Ajax wasn't saying anything either. He was just as shocked as I was, maybe a little more. After a whole 60 seconds ticked by, she finally lifted her head, shaking it a bit. Her eyes met mine and I gulped. For the first time in my life, Dimitri Carlos actually gulped. They're beautiful. Ajax whispered to me. I simply nodded. Lily's wolf was pure white. Strikingly white, not a mark on her. A light glow surrounded her entire being, almost like fireflies were dancing around her. Her eyes were the same majestic green, a startling contrast with her fur. Even her nose was white. I briefly wondered if her tongue was too. A stupid thought, but I was dazed. What had me pinned to the ground, unmoving, though, was not only color, but her size. She was huge. Larger than any wolf I'd ever seen, larger than me. That point was only emphasized when she shakily got her to feet, causing me to crane my neck to look up at her. She stood around 10 feet tall. It would take 3 of Ajax piled onto one another to measure up to her. She's a mother wolf. Ajax said. She can't be. They don't exist. Are you dumb or blind? Definitely dumb. Slowly, I got to my feet, and Lily's eyes widened as if she just realized that I was so far beneath her. Taking a couple steps back, she looked down at herself. Shaking her head back and forth, she suddenly bolted through the trees away from me. Wait! Lily! I called after her. I shifted quickly, not even caring about my clothes, and took off after her. She wasn't hard to follow, obviously. Ajax was fast, but his speed was outdone by her long legs. She covered more space in one stride than we did in 4. I would never catch up to her, so I could only follow and not lose sight of her. Finally, she stopped near the small lake in the woods. I also came to a halt, watching her from a distance. Should I approach her? She was gazing into the water at her reflection. And then she lifted her head and howled. The sound reverberated off the trees and filled the forest. It was so loud, I was certain it reached back to the pack. The soft glow around her became stronger, a shine instead of a glow. The sight of her like this would be forever etched into my memory. And just like that, her eyes landed on me. There was no fear in me whatsoever as I approached her. Every story I'd ever heard of the mother wolf was filled with fear. I had none. Maybe because she was my mate, or maybe because I was an alpha. Either way, I didn't care. Ajax was desperate to go to his mate, and when we reached her, they touched noses. Best forget about ever mating in wolf form. There's no way. I snickered. Shut it. I'll manage somehow, was his reply. Lily crouched down and they started to play together. I retreated into the background and let him have his moment. It was a little awkward, given her size, but the way she yipped and jumped around, she looked like a pup. A gin or mouse pup, but one all the same. I could feel them communicating, so I didn't intrude. Knowing Ajax, it was probably crude anyways. After a while, her body began to tremble and I knew she was going to shift back. Ajax gave me back control and I trotted over to a tree where we kept a stash of clothes in a large trunk. Useful for those who shifted and didn't have clothes with them. I opened it and grabbed a pair of sweatpants for me and a shirt and jeans for Lily. When I came out, she was already in her human form, sitting on the ground with her knees hugged to her chest. I avoided looking at her as I tossed her the clothes. "Thanks," she muttered. A few seconds later, she tapped me on the shoulder. Sparks erupted where she touched, making my eyes widen. "The bond is so much stronger now," Ajax said. "Yeah, I noticed," I replied. Aside from the sparks, I also felt an urge to go to her, touch her, and take in her scent. The overwhelming desire to be close to her took me by surprise. I wanted to claim her, hold her, bury myself inside her. "Oh, she looks angry," Ajax said. Only then did I really look at her. She did indeed look annoyed. But that wasn't why my jaw dropped silently. Lily looked totally different. Instead of the thin, frail girl, now stood before me was a healthy and curvy woman. My gaze traveled from her face to her toes and back again. She was stunning. "What are you staring at?" My eyes snapped to hers. "How?" "I don't know how." "You're a mother wolf," I said. "Yeah, so I noticed." She looked away, across the water. "You look." Her gaze met mine again, and the anger was back. "I look? What?" she snapped. Different." Yet I noticed that too. Apparently being a supernatural wolf has its perks. But don't think it changes anything. "Excuse me." She took a step towards me, almost touching my chest with hers. "You don't get to have me now just because of who I am. You didn't want me before, so this changes nothing." "Nothing. You only wanted me around because it made you stronger to have your mate by your side, am I right?" I flinched a little. "That's what I thought. I'm not as stupid as you think I am. Why would someone like you," she gestured up and down my body, "be with someone like me when I was the way I was? You wouldn't, even if I was your mate. Now that I'm apparently some mythical wolf, you still don't get to have me, mate or not. You're going to reject me?" I asked through gritted teeth. "No. I could never do that, Aya. I will stay here, and we will be mates, but in name only." Was she serious? Of course she was. All I'd done since she got here was ignore her and insult her. I lowered my gaze, ashamed to meet her eyes. "Don't," she snapped. "Don't pretend when you don't." She took a deep breath. "I only have one condition." "What?" I asked. "We let our wolves out with each other. Aya loves her mate, and he loves her. Just because we don't, doesn't mean we have to deprive them of each other. So we have to let them be together, be happy." Anger rose in me. "So you're giving orders now? To me?" Her eyes flashed. "You're right, Alpha. Are you saying you'll deprive your wolf of his mate? Are you really that selfish?" She scoffed. I clenched my jaw. Whatever happened to her turned her into a real piece of work. The really aggravating thing was, even though she annoyed me off, all I could think about was shutting her up with my mouth. "I'll think about it," I said. She rolled her eyes heavily. "Typical," she muttered. "I'm going home. I'm exhausted." I caught her elbow as she passed me. The sparks zipped through my fingertips and spread through my body. I made an immense effort to focus. You can't just walk away from me. After all, I had to come looking for you. Imagine what you would have gone through without me being here. Oh, I almost forgot. Thank you for coming to find me, even though it was totally obvious that I ran away from you. I didn't ask you to come find me. And I can walk away from you. Just watch. She ripped her arm from my grasp and walked away through the trees. My fists clenched and I let out a breath. I hated to admit it. I always found her attractive, but now? This whole mate thing just got a lot more complicated. Lily's POV: Dimitri hadn't followed me back home. I assumed he went for another run after I left. Or maybe he went to find Janine. I didn't really care. Most of my mind was still reeling from two shocking events, the fact that I was a mother wolf, and the out-of-body experience I'd had during my shift. I doubt Dimitri was aware of it. Lying on my bed, I closed my eyes and replayed the memory in my head. I hit the ground and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my wolf form. Disappointment flooded through me. I really wasn't able to shift? Hello, Lily. I spun around at the sound of my name and gasped. The most gorgeous woman I'd ever laid eyes on was standing in front of me, a sweet smile on her face. Her hair was long and black with a tinge of blue and a little wave to it. It swayed behind her and caressed her waist in the wind. She had a heart-shaped face with well-proportioned features and plump red lips. Her body was incredible, even under the white dress she wore. Her eyes were a deep purple, but light and friendly. She was also the palest person I'd ever seen. Her skin could rival snow, but she was flawless. Who are you? I asked. Her smile widened. My name is Celeste. But you may know me as Moon Goddess. My eyes widened. The Moon Goddess. I know, it's a lot to take in. Why don't we have a seat and talk? I looked around for the first time. We were standing in a meadow with tall grass and wild flowers. The sky was cloudless and peaceful. The meadow went on as far as the eye could see, seemingly with no end. Small hills rose up here and there. It was a beautiful place. Okay. I sank to the ground and Celeste laughed merrily. With a wave of her hand, a sofa appeared, looking very out of place in the meadow. Come sit, this is much more comfortable. She patted the cushion next to her. Awkwardly, I got up and joined her. You must have many questions, Lily. Celeste began. I nodded. Why am I here? Did I? No, you did not die. I called you here, but only temporarily. Why? She cupped my face in her hands gently and met my gaze. You are extremely special to me, Lily. I have chosen you for as great task. A dangerous one too. I cannot tell you everything, but I can tell you that I believe I have chosen wisely. Task? What task? Her hands dropped from my face to grasp mine. There is danger ahead, Lily. A danger that could kill many, many of my children. I won't say they all deserve to live, because some of them do not. Some of them have chosen not to follow me anymore. All they care about now is attaining power and using my name to get what they want, killing mercilessly and without just cause. It needs to end. Okay. That's sad. But what can I do? I can't even make it up the stairs. I said. She laughed louder this time. I will help you with that, Lily, don't worry. You will not be burdened by the effects of your past anymore. A thought struck me with her words, and I took my hands from hers. Speaking of my past? Can I ask why? Why did you let me go through everything I did? Why did you let me suffer? You're supposed to love all your children, but you turned a blind eye to my abuse. Tears sprung to my eyes while I talked, and by the end I was nearly shouting. Celeste smiled sadly. I am so sorry, Lily. You are wrong though. I never turned away from you. Every mark inflicted on you was a hole in my heart. Would you believe me if I told you it was necessary? No. How could that be necessary? I cried. I give all my children free will. I could not control your abusers even though I wanted to. If I step in every time, where does it end? It's also not fair. Those who do badly will face their sins when they meet me. That is all I can do. You're right. It's not fair. I am sorry. We sat in silence for a while. Celeste was the one to break it. Your mate is not a bad person, she said. What? Dimitri. Truly, he is not bad. He has a good heart. A good soul. But he is lost right now. Okay. Lily, I need you to not give up on him. He may have only accepted you for the wrong reasons, but with time wrong reasons? What are you talking about? I interrupted. Oh, I thought Ajax would have told Aya by now. Dimitri accepted you to make himself stronger. A Luna makes their alpha strongest when they are by their side. She said it as if the words didn't cut through me. What? Are you joking? I'm to kill him. I yelled. Celeste placed her hand on top of mine. Please do not. I am not saying do not be angry. But you and Dimitri are made for each other. I paired the two of you for a reason. When you are ready, you will find that nobody loves you more. Right? Is Dimitri even capable of love? I asked. He is. As I said, he is lost. Help him find himself. Can you do that for me, Lily? I thought about it. I'll try. That's all I can ask. Celeste's image trembled in front of me. I blinked, sure I was imagining things. But it happened again, and again. It is time for you to go back, Lily. Remember what I've said, and I hope you can forgive me for your past. I love you. She cupped my cheeks once more and pressed her lips lightly to my forehead. My vision went white, then black. And then I was back in the clearing with my mate. Opening my eyes, I stared at the ceiling. Celeste wanted me to forgive her. I had. I mean, she was the moon goddess. I couldn't hate her even if I tried. Her choices confused out of me, but she was right. She couldn't bring down flames and fire every time someone messed up. I hated to accept it, but I did. However, her other request was less complicated. I'd promised to try with Dimitri, but the way he looked at me after my shift, as if I was everything he ever wanted, that annoyed me off. Where was that look before? I was only good enough for him when I wasn't thin and weak. He was so shallow. I knew I was different, I just didn't know how much. I was scared to look in the mirror. In fact, I'd been avoiding it. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes and got up from the bed. Slowly, and blindly, making my way to the bathroom, I stopped in front of the mirror. Grasping the sink for dear life, I peeked one eye open. Then the other. And then I just stared. Yeah, I should have avoided this a little longer. That can't be me. Yup. That's you. You're hot. I chuckled in my head. I was too stunned to answer her. My hair was the same shade of red, but it looked shinier, healthier. Every part of me was thicker. My face was filled out, no longer skin on bone, and it made my features stand out. That's not all. Take off your shirt. Hey! Just do it, and turn around. I did as my wolf asked, in a kind of daze. When I looked over my shoulder into the mirror, I gasped. My gasp was echoed from the doorway. Lily POV. My head spun to find Thera standing in the doorway gaping at me. I quickly grabbed my shirt from the floor. Wait! Thera gasped. Walking up to me, she grabbed my shoulders and spun me around. Her fingers traced along my back where my scars used to be. All that was left was smooth, new skin. How is this possible? Thera whispered. You recognize me? I asked her. She snorted. Of course I recognize you. What a silly question. But, how, Lily? I pulled my shirt back on and faced her. I'm not sure. I mean, shifting wouldn't have healed those scars. She interrupted me. Well, maybe not for regular wolves. I replied quietly. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean regular wolves? Shuffling my feet, I avoided her piercing gaze. Lily. Hazel's voice drifted into the bathroom. A second later, she appeared in the doorway. Oh. Hello Dr. Carlos. Hello Hazel. Lily, could I talk to you for a oh my goddess? She gasped as she finally really saw me. What happened to you? I shifted. I said lamely. Hazel just openly stared at me. I was starting to feel like an attraction at the zoo. Okay. Let's just all sit down and talk. I want to know what's up with this. Thera waved her hand up and down my body as well. Come on. She led us to the bed and we all climbed on, sitting in a circle. The girls looked at me expectantly and I sighed. Then I launched into my story about the night's events, leaving out my visit with Celeste. I don't know why, but that felt private. When I finished, Thera and Hazel looked at each other, then at me, and then back at each other. It seemed neither of them knew exactly what to say. Guys? Can one of you say something? Please? I asked. I'm sorry, This is just... Wow! They said in unison. I laughed. Look, being a mother wolf doesn't change who I am. Okay, it may have changed how I look, but I'm still me. I said. That's not it, Lily. It's just not so easy to actually see it. I mean, we've heard about the mother wolf all our lives, as bedtime stories. They don't even exist. Yet, here you are, living proof, and it's honestly amazing. Thera gushed. What did Dimitri say? Hazel asked and I flinched. Thera narrowed her eyes again, this time with a steely look. What did my brother do? She asked. He didn't do anything per se. I sighed again. He. Okay, maybe I overreacted to his reaction, I doubt that. Tell us. Thera clipped. Well, after I shifted back and he saw me like this, he looked, well. I don't know, he had that look. What look? Hazel asked. You know, the look. The look that says, baby, I'll lie down in the dirt so you can walk all over me kind of look. I said. That dumbass. Thera shook her head. I don't understand, isn't that good? Don't you want him to look at you like that? Hazel asked confused. Thera answered before I could. Normally, yes. But my brother has been ignoring Lily since she got here. And then she goes from being well, Lily, to this Lily, and all of a sudden he's interested? That's not cool at all. I'm so going to kick his ass. She growled. I laughed again, that was something I wanted to see. No need there, I already told him it wasn't happening. She clapped her hands. Good for you, girl. Make him work for it. Serves him right. I smiled, nodding. Inside, I was groaning. Ever since I shifted, the bond between Dmitri and I had grown considerably. I'd woken up from an overly intense dream about him, and let's just say it left me in a very edgy mood. All I wanted was to see him, inhale his scent, and feel his skin on mine. I was ashamed to admit I was more or less hiding in my room to avoid seeing him. I wasn't entirely sure I could control my hormones or my urges around him. As if he could hear my thoughts, a knock sounded on my door and Hazel and Thera stopped talking. Come in. I called. Dmitri opened the door, pausing when he saw all of us on the bed. I raised an eyebrow at him. Hi. He said. Hello, Dmitri. Thera said. She gave him a look and he glanced at me. Clearly he knew I'd ratted him out. Can I talk to you a sec? He asked me. He glanced at his sister and Hazel. Alone? I guess so. I replied quietly. Thera plopped back onto my pillows and Hazel studied her nails. I glared at them until Thera looked up and nodded her head toward the hall. Rolling my eyes, I got off the bed and followed my mate out the door, closing it behind me. This way. Dmitri reached for his door, opening it. I hesitated. Come on, I don't bite. A hint of a smirk played on his face when he said that, and I gave him a look. I wasn't in the mood to flirt with him. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and walked past him into his room. His scent hit me and I inhaled deeply. Dmitri's bedroom wasn't what I expected, but then again, nothing about Blood Moon was so far. His walls were a deep grey, almost black. Actually, most of the furnishing was too. This was a very dark room, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It suited Dmitri very well. The colors and his scent mixed very nicely, creating a very safe feeling. Looking to my right, the safe feeling turned into something completely different when my gaze landed on his Ginnermouse California king bed. The sound of the door clicking into place snapped me out of my, honestly, embarrassingly dirty thoughts. Yet I couldn't seem to take my eyes from the bed. Lily. It took me a second to realize Dmitri had been talking to me for a while. Shaking my head, I finally averted my gaze and turned to him. You wanted to talk? I asked him. Yeah. He ran his hands through his hair, and my heart fluttered. It was a really adorable action. Okay. About. He walked past me and sat on his bed. My cheeks flushed from my earlier fantasies. I talked to James. He said. My eyes flew to his in shock. What? I talked to James. He repeated. I turned my head to the side. And? I asked. He denied everything. He deadpanned. But, Dmitri held up his hand and I shut up. He denied everything. I told him so, and demoted him. James is no longer my head warrior. My jaw dropped. Really? Really? But I thought you needed to talk to Hazel. I did. She told me everything. So did Celia. And Shelley. And Brittany. And wait. I held up my hands in front of me. There was more than just Hazel. Yet. A lot more. He blew out a breath, his eyebrows furrowing. I crossed the room, sitting next to him. How? How did you get so many women too? I didn't. After I talked to James, Celia came to me. She said she overheard us, and decided to finally talk to me. After that, the rest came forward. If I didn't have enough evidence to demote him from Hazel alone, I sure do now. That's incredible! I exclaimed. Dmitri looked at me like I'd gone crazy. I mean, it's not incredible what he's done, obviously. But it is awesome that something is done about it. He won't be able to do it again, will he? No. I'll make sure of it. Dmitri promised. Thank you. For listening to me, for doing something. It means a lot, Dmitri. Without thinking about it, I reached out and placed my hand on his. Sparks shot through my hand and up my arm. Dmitri's eyes darkened and a low growl erupted from his chest. A foreign feeling pooled in my stomach and traveled down between my thighs. My breath started to come faster, and I bit my lip to keep it under control. His eyes dropped to my lips and my heart stuttered. All my thoughts from earlier came flooding back, forcefully. The things I wanted to do to him on this bed, the things I wanted him to do to me. Unconsciously I found myself leaning in, so close that our lips were only an inch apart. Dmitri accepted you to make himself stronger. A Luna makes their alpha strongest when they are by their side. Celeste's words floated through my mind, jolting me out of my daze. I felt as if someone had thrown ice-cold water on me. I ripped my hand out of Dmitri's and pushed him away. His eyes went wide with shock and confusion, but I was already on my feet, heading to the door. Again, thank you for taking care of the James situation. I'll see you around, Dmitri. I babbled quickly. Lily, bye. Slamming his door shut behind me, skipped across to my room. Thera and Hazel looked up as I entered. Judging by the identical looks on their faces, they suspected what had just happened. I shook my head when Thera opened her mouth. I don't want to talk about it, I said. She pursed her lips, but nodded. So, movie night? Hazel asked. Yes. I sighed and gratefully sank onto the bed beside her. Lily POV. It had been 1 week since the incident in Dmitri's room. I threw myself into activities in order to avoid thinking about it. Clint had agreed to start training me. I'd never been allowed to train at my old pack, and I was desperate to learn. I'd been keeping company with Greta, Hazel and even Thera at the hospital. I picked up a few tricks on treating wounds with her and decided to add it to my list of interests. Maybe I'd work there officially someday. Goddess knows I'd had more than enough practice cleaning and bandaging my own wounds over the years. Setting broken bones was nothing new to me, something Thera learned about me but did not comment on. The weekend loomed and all my friends had plans. Plans they had invited me to get in on, and that I'd declined. As much as I was enjoying my new life, save one person, I was still extremely shy about meeting new people. My little group wanted to attend a club Saturday night, which was way out of my comfort zone. Especially when I learned that most of the pack frequented that particular spot on the weekend to let loose. I knew I wasn't ready for that yet, so come Saturday night, I was holed up in the gym training by myself. I'd completed 50 laps on the track, which I was extremely proud of, and was now lifting weights. We've gotten so much stronger, said Aya. I know. It's awesome, I replied. We would have gotten here eventually, but thank the moon goddess for blessing us with this body sooner rather than later. Agreed. Thinking I should move on to the next set of weights, I placed my current ones in the holders and sat up. Sweat dripped from my forehead, but it didn't bother me. I liked working out, more than I thought I ever would. The feeling of being stronger made me proud. Like maybe I could actually step into my role as Luna and be worthy of it someday. You look like you could use a water. An unattractive yelp left me as I jumped to my feet and spun around. An unfamiliar guy was leaning against the weights, arms crossed. He was pretty average looking. Brown hair, blue eyes, lean but muscular build and ripped faded blue jeans with a black t-shirt. His skin was a nice olive color, but it might have been the only attractive quality about him. The way he was looking at me made me uncomfortable too, like I was a juicy cheeseburger and he was a starved man. "What are you doing here?" I asked. The guy laughed and the sound put me on edge. He sounded like one of the villains from the Disney movies Hazel and I had been watching. "This is the gym, right? Anyone can be here." I shook my head. "No, I mean, I thought everyone was out at the club tonight." "Most are. I've been there so much, it's become a little boring. I thought I'd try something new tonight," he said. I looked him up and down quickly. "It doesn't seem like working out is anything new for you." He smirked. "It's not. But working out on a Saturday night? That is new." "Oh." He stared at me with that starved look again and I remembered I was only wearing a pair of black leggings and a blue sports bra. I suddenly felt very exposed and crossed my arms in an attempt to show less skin. "You seem nervous," he stated. "No," I denied quickly. "I just wasn't expecting anyone to join me." "But you can use the weights if you want. I'm done with them." "Thanks very much." I nodded and turned to leave. Halfway to the door I heard him call me. "Yes." I turned and looked at him. "It was nice to meet you, Luna." I blinked. "You know who I am?" "Oh yes. How could I not know the woman who got me kicked out of my position?" My heart stopped, and then picked up double time. This was James? No wonder I didn't recognize him from anywhere. I didn't make it habit to seek out scum, so I'd never met him. And Hazel had never given me a description of the guy, other than his personality. "You look surprised, Luna." His tone was no longer friendly, in fact, it was cold. I went into alert mode and I did the same. Instinctively, I turned my body to face him fully, the way Clint had taught me. "Do I?" I asked. James nodded. "You didn't think we wouldn't meet eventually?" "I haven't thought about it really." "That's too bad." He straightened up and took a few steps in my direction. "Because I've been thinking about you a lot lately." My feet carried me backwards at his words. "Why?" He scoffed. "How could I not be curious about the woman who has our alpha wrapped around her little finger? I'm not the only one either. Dimitri has been acting different since you showed up." Ignoring that last part, I replied, "I don't have him wrapped around my finger." James stopped a few feet from me. His eyes were ice blue and flat. "Oh really? Then explain something to me. How that is our alpha never said a word about who I until you show up, huh? I've been with tons of women in this pack. Suddenly, we get a Luna, and they're all claiming abuse and I get demoted." He practically yelled. My reaction to his outburst was totally unexpected. As his words processed, a laugh burst from my chest and out of my mouth. "Are you serious? Your demotion had nothing to do with me, James. It was the result of your own stupid choices. Dimitri never said anything because he didn't know exactly what you were doing, all the disgusting ways you were using and manipulating the women of the pack. Taking them to the pack house, to the alpha's floor. Yes, I had a discussion with him about it, but you didn't really think he wouldn't have found out eventually? Even if I had never come into the picture?" I shook my head. You ruined everything." James spit. "No, All I did was help put an end to you abusing women. I shot back. James laughed humorlessly. A shiver ran down my spine. Can we leave now? I said. Rule number 1: never turn your back on an enemy. And he's definitely our enemy. Puff. Like he could take us down. He could take me down, Aya. True. So let me out. Not yet. You think you're so brave, Luna? So good and strong? Yet, you were stupid enough to make an enemy your first week here. And also stupid enough to come to an empty building, alone, when everyone else is out. I gulped nervously. I hated to admit it, but he had a point. He took another step and everything Clint had taught me so far washed away, replaced with my old instincts. Turning, I ran for the door, a scream ready in my throat. Suddenly my feet left the ground and I was thrown backwards, landing on my back with a painful gasp. Lily, we have to shift. I barely registered I's words when James threw himself on top of me, pinning my arms to my sides. Regardless, I struggled against him, but even I knew it was a lost fight. He had years of training, I had 1 week. And if I shifted right under him, I could actually kill him. I didn't want to kill anyone, not even a parasite like James. Not so strong now. A sharp sting ran across my cheek and my face whipped to the side as James slapped me. I yelled. He slapped me again before roughly grabbing my face, forcing me to look at him. His eyes held pure fiery rage. Fear gripped me. Be careful what you wish for. Because of you, I haven't gotten laid in a while. My breathing stopped. Adrenaline kicked in and I bucked my hips in an attempt to throw him off. I twisted and writhed under him, desperately attempting to get my hands free. Stop struggling. You can't win. Get off of me. Help. Help. I screamed. James slammed his hand over my mouth. Shut up. He hissed. The next second, I sank my teeth into his hand, causing him to howl in pain. His fist connected with my stomach, winding me. While I gasped for breath, he grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked. I winced in pain and lust shone in his eyes. He was getting off on this, my pain. Goddess, he really was a sick. James leaned down to my ear, his breath fanning my cheek, and I shivered in disgust. I heard Dimitri hasn't touched you yet. So either you're playing hard to get, or he's simply not interested. He chuckled. Both are fine with me. I'd hate to have his sloppy seconds anyways. The hand that wasn't holding my face swept down over my shoulder and down my arm. When he reached my stomach, I whimpered in fear. Panic rushed through me so strongly I began to feel dizzy. James moved his hand higher by inches, prolonging my torture until he was cupping my BT. I choked back vomit and tears at the same time. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing either. Oh yeah, I'm going to enjoy you, baby. Closing my eyes, I went to my happy place. Maybe I would survive what happened next if I stayed there indefinitely. Dimitri POV. I was sitting on my office looking over the new security plan with Ben and Luke. I was oddly on edge this evening, but I chalked it up to just being stressed. I hadn't gone for a run since the night Lily shifted, so that was probably a big factor. The bigger problem was my mate. Well, not her so much, but her attitude towards me. Ever since our talk last week, she'd been conveniently absent. I never saw her at meals. I'd learned from Ben that she was eating in her room again. I didn't see her around the house, and I'd learned from Luke that she'd taken up various activities from training with that Clint boy to working with Vera at the hospital. When she wasn't doing that, she with Hazel. And obviously I didn't see her at night. It bothered me more than it should that she was obviously ignoring me. The night she shifted, I was so worried when I couldn't find her. How stupid could she be, trying to go through that alone? It took me way too long to find her, and when I did, all I wanted to was to scream at her for being so dumb. But the way she'd clung to me, the way she needed me, overwrite all my anger. Then she'd yelled at me and basically told me to FK off. Okay, yes, she had many good reasons to be angry with me, but really? She could have died. Speaking of, I still don't know how she found out why I brought her here. Nobody knew, not even Ben or Luke. They were under the assumption that with time, I'd warm up to the idea of a mate. I grilled Ajax, but he swore he said nothing to her wolf. Maybe Lily was right and she wasn't as stupid as I originally thought she was. Why else would someone accept their mate only to ignore them and treat them the way I treated her? Sounds like someone is feeling guilty. Ajax commented smugly. Shut it. I don't feel guilty. Ahoy. That's why you can't stop thinking about her. Can't stop wanting to see her. I said shut it. He chuckled but receded to the back of my mind. So, I was thinking we put cameras here, here, and here. Ben pointed to various spots on the map of our land. Night vision and heat detection. That's dumb. So we'll know when someone is already in our borders. Luke scoffed. Ben flipped him off. I wasn't done. So we put cameras on these spots and we put the rest outside the borders at our weak spots. We'll know when someone is coming, and if anybody manages to slip past, we'll know that too. I rubbed my chin. I think we should have them here and here too. I pointed. I'll have to order more. Whatever. I just want us to be secured. I said. Ben circled the marked spots with a marker and nodded. Okay, that's done. Thank goddess. Luke mumbled. I grabbed 3 glasses from the shelf behind me and a bottle of whiskey. Pouring each of us a drink, I sat down in my chair with a heavy sigh. I wish the rogues would get it through their heads they can't win against us. Why bother even trying? I grumbled. Rogues are generally known for being stupid. Who knows what goes on in their heads? Ben said. Luke simply stared into his glass, his lips pursed. I knew that look like the back of my hand. He was hiding something. I picked up a paperclip and flicked it at him. Something you'd like to share with the group? I asked. He rolled his eyes and I smirked. I knew him well, and he hated it. Upending his drink, he swallowed it in one go and blew out a breath. So, there's something I want to tell you guys. Ben set his glass down and sat down on the sofa. I propped my feet on my desk and gestured for him to continue. So. I met my mate. Luke mumbled quickly. What? Ben shouted, jumping to his feet. When? I asked. 2 weeks ago. And you didn't tell us. What man? Ben punched Luke in the arm and scowled at him. Well, it wasn't who I thought it was going to be. Who is she? I asked eagerly. Luke had been waiting so long to meet his mate. Unlike me, he constantly raved about finding the perfect girl and giving her the world. It got on my nerves a lot, but I was genuinely happy that he finally met her. But Luke didn't look happy at all. In fact, he looked scared. His eyes met mine, and he didn't seem to be able to find the words he wanted. Ben and I waited patiently as he got himself together enough to tell us. It's a he, not a she actually. I blinked, stunned. His mate was a guy? But, you're not gay. Ben was equally as confused as I was. Luke blushed a deep red. I'm not. I stared at him, shocked. How did I not know this? I grew up with Luke, spent almost every day with him. I'd never seen him with any guys, never even seen him look at one that way. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about me, or meeting my mate. I thought. I mean, I didn't know if you'd still want me as your gamma. He said. Why would you think that? I asked. Before he could answer, I followed up with, you think I'm some homophobe? No, no. You know, a lot of these other alphas are real old school, and I don't want you catching flack because you have a gamma who's mated to a guy. I scoffed loudly. FK them. I'm proud to have you as my gamma, no matter who your mate is. And if anyone has anything to say about it, I'll punch them in the jaw. You're one of my best friends, Luke. I don't care who you love. He looked like he was about to cry. Really? Really? Come here, man. I stood and we hugged. I'm happy for you. When do we meet him? Luke chuckled nervously. Well, that's the other thing. See, I would have told you guys right away, but... Ben asked. But, he's a rogue. Luke finished. What? This time Ben and I yelled together. Luke threw his hands up in front of him quickly. I swear, he's not like others. And he's never been a part of the rogues that attacked us. He's different. Only because he's your mate. Ben said. No. He didn't choose to be a rogue. His pack was destroyed a few years back, and only a few survived. Instead of sticking together, they went their separate ways, and he hasn't found another pack. He wants to meet you, Dimitri, wants to join us officially. Luke's eyes were pleading with me, big and wide. He looked like a puppy. Finally, I gave in. Fine. Tell him we'll meet him tomorrow. I don't want a hike skulking around our borders, he could get attacked. Bring him here tonight, but keep him out of sight for now. Okay. No problem. Luke ran out of the office so fast, I almost laughed. I looked at Ben, who was shaking his head, a small smile playing on his lips. Did you know? I asked him. Nope. When I get the chance, I'm going to grill him about all the guys he's secretly been screwing behind our backs. How did we not notice all these years? Right? Though, if you really think about it, he did spend a lot of time with Derek. My eyes widened. Derek was my cousin, and also super gay. He owned it though, and when my aunt and uncle kicked him out after he came out, my parents took him in. He met his mate a year later and moved to California. Before that though, we all used to spend 2 weeks every summer at a cabin on the lake. Luke and Derek were always together, practically attached at the hip. I brushed it off as being really good friends and having a lot in common. You don't think? Maybe. Ben said. No. Together, we burst out laughing at overlooking the obvious all these years. Suddenly, Ajax forced himself to the front of my mind. Something's wrong. He said. What are you talking about? Aya and Lily, they're in trouble. My laughter died on my lips and I was on my feet heading to the door within seconds, Ben right on my tail. Whoa, hey. What's the matter? He asked as he tried to keep up with me. Ajax says Lily in trouble. Okay. Where is she? I braked so fast that Ben almost ran into me. I don't know. Okay. She didn't go to the club, did she? I don't know. Well, who is she with tonight? I don't know. I yelled. Ben looked at me with worry and a hint of disappointment. I knew what he was thinking. I was an ST mate. Can Ajax find her? He asked. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, letting my wolf come forward and better reach out to his mate. Jim. I took off so fast that Ben was left behind. I pushed myself to go faster as I flew down the halls and downstairs. My excelled speed didn't seem fast enough. All I could think about was getting to Lily before anything happened. Before she was hurt. When I reached the gym doors, I wasted no time in ripping them open and running inside. What I saw had me seeing red. Oh yeah, I'm going to enjoy you, baby. He hummed down to her. A ground-shaking roar ripped out of me as I raced to them, throwing his disgusting body into the far wall and away from Lily. How dare you touch my mate? Dimitri POV. I was breathing hard, my vision clouded by hate and rage. Ajax pushed forward forcefully, and I wasn't even trying to hold him back. How dare this scum touch what is mine? When I looked at James, all I saw was my next victim, a disgusting piece of filth that I was going to gut like a fish. Yet I couldn't make myself move from Lily, still on the floor. Part of me wanted to rush James and tear his head off, and an equally large part of me had to stay and protect her. It was a confusing mental battle. Alpha. I shut up. I roared. Warriors to the gym now. I sent out a mind link. Yes, Alpha, on our way, Alpha. James and I stared at each other, one with fear, the other with murderous intent. The doors opened and closed and I caught Ben's scent. Finally, knowing someone I trusted was with me, I moved away from Lily and stalked towards James. Stupidly, he tried to run for the door, but I caught him, slamming him against the wall by the throat. You must have a death wish. I hissed. What happened? Ben asked behind me. It was at that moment that Lily started crying. It started off as little hiccups but soon turned into broken, raw sobs. Glancing back at her, I saw Ben with a worried expression awkwardly patting her arm. I growled again and he immediately took his hands away from her. Thera burst through the doors, followed by 4 warriors. She rushed to Lily while my warriors surrounded me. Slamming James' head against the wall for good measure, I gave him up to my men. Take him to the dungeon. Put him in the smallest, dirtiest cell you can find and give him 2 shots of wolfsbane to keep him quiet. I ordered. Right away, sir. 2 men hoisted James up and flanked by the other 2, dragged him out of the room. I turned my attention back to my sister and my mate. Thera was rubbing Lilith's back and talking quietly to her while she cried. Ben sat back on his heels and let Thera do her thing. He's gone, Lily. It's okay now, Shaw. He's gone. Thera murmured. I couldn't, do it, Thera. I couldn't. Lily sobbed. It's okay, sweetie. It's okay. Thera met my eyes, motioning me forward. Kneeling beside Lily, I took over rubbing her back. Light sparks came through her clothes and into my palm and she started to breathe a little easier. We'll give you some space, Thera said. Taking Ben's arm, she pulled him up. Right outside, boss, Ben said. I nodded in response. When the door closed, I scooped my arms under Lily and brought her into my lap. She rested her head against my chest, continuing to cry while I rubbed her back slowly. I am sorry, Dimitri. I'm sorry. She hiccuped. Don't do that, I said softly. The tone of my voice surprised me. I was never this gentle with anyone. What happened, Lily? She scrunched her fists into my shirt. He was angry. Because you Demoted him. He said it, my fault. He tried to, he was going to. Her words cut off on another sob, and it took all my willpower to stay where I was with her and not to go and kill that cur. It's okay. I know. You don't have to say any more. I told her. I tried to shift. I wanted to. But I couldn't. It would have killed him. I couldn't do it. She cried. It's okay, Lily. He's gone. I repeated Tyara's words. In that moment, the situation became vivid. Lily had almost been raped. She was scared, hurting. My hands started to shake as I realized exactly how close she had come to being a victim of the most brutal crime. And I couldn't even deny my fault in it. I hadn't known where she was, if she was with friends or not. I hadn't cared to ask. What would have happened if I hadn't listened to Ajax? If I hadn't gotten to her on time? Own. I realized I'd unconsciously been squeezing Lily tighter to me. Too tight. Hastily, I let go. Sorry. We sat in silence for a little bit. I didn't know what to say to her, and honestly, the guilt I was feeling was making it hard to talk. She looked calmer now. She was still crying, although silently, the tears following their predecessors' paths. The look in her eyes, though, I never wanted to see it there again. Dimitri. I turned to see Thera poking her head in the door. She gave me a questioning look and I nodded. Ben came in with her, blanket in hand. He gave it to Thera, who proceeded to wrap it around Lily. Come on. I'm going to run you a bath and get you some food. She helped Lily to her feet, wrapping her arm around her while leading her to the door. Lily looked back to me, mumbling, "And thank you." And then they were gone. Exactly one heartbeat later, Ben's fist connected with my cheek, sending me flying backwards. What? What exactly? What is the matter with you? Ben screamed. What is wrong with you? You didn't know where she was, Dimitri. You had no idea. Do you know what would have happened if Ajax hadn't warned you? Do you even care? I stood up angrily. Of course I do. Do you? You sure as don't act like it. Why did you even bring her here, hey? You're the st excuse for a mate I've ever. His head snapped back as I landed a punch. He quickly recovered and tackled me. We rolled around throwing punches and jabs until he pushed me off, wiping blood from his lip. I snarled. No, you Dimitri. I don't know what idea you cooked up when you met your, but this isn't how we treat mates. He snapped. My eyes widened at his words. Did everyone see through me so easily? Hitting my shoulder roughly as he passed, I watched him walk out the door. Anger and guilt and regret ran through me as I ran my hands through my hair. I yelled. I had no clue what to do now, and I really didn't want to stop and think about what my beta said to me. Not yet. Instead, I stripped in the middle of the room and shifted. I needed to run. I needed to get out and decompress for a while. Using my head to push the doors open, I jogged down the hall and a startled Omega opened the front door for me. I nodded a thanks as I passed and sprinted towards the woods, disappearing into the trees. I jumped over logs and under branches, feeling the wind rush through my fur, and just turned my mind off. I focused on the feeling of the dirt under my paws, the sounds of squirrels and birds and deer in the bush around me. A rabbit jumped into my path, quickly freezing in fear as I passed and then rushing away again. I didn't stop for hours. I couldn't stop. If I did, I'd start to think again, and I didn't want to. So we're just running from our problems now? Ajax asked. I ignored him. That's so alpha-like. Shut up. shut up, and shut up. Why? Because you don't want to think about Lily? You don't want to acknowledge that Ben was right and you're an ST mate. I whimpered. Face it, Dimitri. You're becoming exactly like him. I'm not. I'm not. You are. But you don't have to. You can change, Dimitri. We don't have to end up like him. Coming to a stop, I sank to the ground. Memories played in my head, my heart clenching more and more. Then memories of tonight's events joined in. James lying atop my mate. Lily crying. The look in her eyes broken and lost and haunted. A look I'd been partially responsible for. But I couldn't let her in. Couldn't love her. Could I? Lily POV. My whole body was numb as I sat in the bathtub. The water was hot, too hot in fact, turning my skin red. But I didn't have the energy to call Vera in to let her know. Maybe it was a good thing though, maybe the temperature would aid in burning off his touch. I could feel it, still. His fist in my hair, pulling until it hurt. His excitement rubbing against my lower regions as he prepared to assault me. The events in the gym replayed in my mind over and over and over again, like a horrible broken record. And the panic I'd felt then was only increasing every time the loop started again. He's gone, Lily. He can't get to us again. I had been repeating that for a while now, but it was like my brain wasn't connected to my body. I knew James was locked away now, but my body was still preparing for the fight. Trying to lock itself down. Slowly, I drew in a long deep breath, holding it for 7 seconds. Then I released it just as slowly and attempted to relax my stiff muscles. Without thinking too much, I grabbed my loofah and soap and began to scrub my body. Something clicked as I washed myself, and I began to scrub harder. And harder. Harder until the roughness of the loofah grated against my bare skin, peeling layers off as it went back and forth. Was there even soap anymore? I didn't care. All I wanted was for every cell of mine he touched to be wiped clean, erased, brand new. Hey, food's her, oh my goddess. Lily. Stop. Vera rushed towards me and yanked the loofah out of my hands, throwing it across the room. Her eyes went wide as she surveyed the damage I'd done. Christ, Lily! You're bleeding. Hey! So I was. Vera looked at my non-caring expression and frowned. Grasping under my arms, she lifted me out of the tub and sat me on the mat. She proceeded to dry me quickly and then tossed me a robe. Shakily, I got to my feet, avoiding her eyes. Food is here. Come eat. I'm not hungry. Too bad. You need to eat something. I'm not hungry. Lily, I said I'm not eating. Okay. I yelled at her. Vera dropped her head into her hands. Lily, please don't make this hard. You need to eat. No. I grumbled. Fine. She threw her hands up and stormed out of the bathroom. A second later, I heard the bedroom door open and slam shut. Regret washed through me immediately. Goddess, Vera had done nothing but help me, and I'd gone and freaked out for no reason. Sighing, I opened my robe and looked at my stomach and chest. The blood was already drying, the wounds already close to being healed. It stung, but oh well. I didn't have the energy to get dressed as I passed my closet on the way to my bed, and a tray with what looked like Greta's beef stew and dinner rolls sat atop it. I sat beside it with a sigh, picking up a roll and picking off tiny pieces. A light knock sounded on my door. Part of me hoped it was Thera, so I could apologize. But when I called to come in, to my surprise it was Ben. He poked his head around the door and avoided looking at me. Are you, Decent? He asked. More or less. You can come in. Yet. I'm going to need that to be more and not less before I do. Dimitri, okay. He didn't need to explain. Ben closed the door while I quickly walked to the closet and located a pair of pajamas, dressing silently. When I was done, I opened the door. Ben gave me a small smile. Hey. Hey. Thought I'd come check on you. Thera sent you up here. I guessed. Well, okay, yes she did. I opened the door wider. Come on in. Ben eyed the tray on my bed. Not hungry? Not really. I shrugged. You need to eat, Munchkin. You could go into shock, food will help. I rolled my eyes. What makes Thera think you can get me to eat when she couldn't? He gave me a hard look and I felt his beta aura. It wasn't anything like Dimitri's, but still intimidating. However, I got the message. They weren't going to leave me alone until I ate the food, so I'd eat the food. I picked up a roll and dipped it in the stew, ripping off a big bite. Happy? I said as I chewed. Ben nodded. I'll be happy when you finish it. He sat on the end of the bed, watching me eat every bite. When I'd finally finished, he smiled. Better? I guess so. I replied. Taking the tray and setting it aside, Ben let out a huge sigh, his eyebrows creased. I know you don't want to talk about it. I don't. I interrupted. But you need to. We can't just pretend that this didn't happen, Lily. And James will have to stand trial. I don't know if you know what that means. I shook my head. It means that when that happens, you will need to stand and give your account of what happened. So you can't just shut it out. I paled. But you were there. You saw it. Why can't you just tell everyone what happened? Ben shook his head. We'll need to know what led to it, what was said. And James will get to have his say too. Though it's not like he can deny it, because we were there for that. I don't know if I can do that. I whispered. You can. You're stronger than you think, Munchkin. Can you stop calling me that? I scowled. Sorry, would you prefer Lillian instead? Goddess, no. Ben laughed and I cracked a small smile. He stood and stretched. Get some sleep. You might feel better in the morning. Giving me another smile, he headed out. Ben. I called before he shut the door. Yet. Can you tell Thera I'm sorry? Please. I will. And she knows. But I'll tell her all the same, no worries. Thanks. He nodded, and finally left me to rest. I was tired, exhausted actually. Turning off the light beside the bed, I curled up on my side, grabbing my pillow and hugging it to my chest. Surprisingly, my mind shut off and pulled me into sleep. Perhaps I dreamed, but maybe I didn't, because the next thing I knew, it was morning and I was wide awake. And Ben was right, I felt different today. I got up and showered, dressed. And all I could think about was that I was strong enough to handle the trial. James needed to pay for what he did, and measures needed to be taken to ensure he never did it again. I could do this. I needed to do this. With a firm handle on my feelings, I went to breakfast. I expected everyone to know about last night's happenings, but nobody blinked at my entrance. It was the same usual morning banter, and Hazel and Clint were sitting at our usual table waving at me. Filling up my plate, I joined them. Hey! I said. How are you? Hazel asked. She scrutinized my expression carefully. Fine. I replied. You sure? Clint asked. Let me guess, Thera told you guys what happened. Yeah. They nodded. Did you tell anyone else? No. Good. Please don't. And really, I am fine. Okay, I wasn't last night, but I'm fine today. Promise. I gave them a reassuring smile. They glanced at each other but nodded. We ate in silence for a while until I noticed Thera enter the cafeteria. Telling my friends I'd be right back, I wound through the tables until I reached her. Thera. She looked at me over her shoulder, giving me her usual smile. There was no hint of anger in her eyes. Hey! How are you today? She asked as she put a stack on pancakes on her plate. Good. Listen, I'm really sore. Thera held up her hand. It's fine. I understand you weren't in a good frame of mind last night, and you vented some of your feelings onto me. If I had $1 for every time someone did that, I'd be a millionaire. Okay, but that doesn't make it right. Just say you forgive me. I pleaded. I forgive you. If it makes you feel better, you are the only person to apologize. She laughed. It does, oddly. Thanks. I pulled her into a hug and she chuckled. Good morning. I released Thera, turning to look at her brother. Dmitri stood to the side of us, hands in pockets. My breath caught in my throat when I looked at him. He had bags under his eyes and his hair was a mess. Was he wearing the same clothes as last night too? Did he even sleep? Morning, big bro. You look like St. Thera said. Dmitri scowled in her direction before turning back to me. Can we talk in my office? Yeah sure. See you later, Lily. Thera waved. I followed my mate out of the cafeteria and up the stairs to his office. He gestured for me to go in first, so I went to the sofa and flopped down. Dmitri sat heavily behind his desk, running his hands over his face. I really don't want to be the one to tell you this. He groaned. What now? The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.